Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We've got a big show this week with 3 brand new reviews that are all playing in theaters right now. This week on the show, Art the Clown is back, and you better not shout and you better not cry in the Terrifier 3. The story of young Donald Trump and his rise to fame in the 70s and 80s under the helping hand of lawyer Roy Cohn in The Apprentice. And finally, it's the summer when everything changed. Mel Gibson stars in Monster Summer. We got a lot to cover this week, so let's jump right in. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows to watch a roar and a burst of flames. The Movie Wire podcast.
There it is.
We just need people like me.
Podcast for hot and The Wire.
And here we go.
Art the Clown is set to unleash chaos on the unsuspecting residents of Miles County as they peacefully drift off to sleep on Christmas Eve in the third entry to another unexpected sequel in Terrifier 3.
You survived the most famous serial killer since Jack the Ripper. The 5-year anniversary is coming up. I think a lot of people would really like to hear from you after all this time. Want to know what it's like to be in the presence of that kind of evil. What goes through your brain when he's close enough to you. You feel his breath. I saw him today.
Who? How can you be sure it was really him?
I could feel it.
Who's this Santa? He's scaring my kid.
Yeah, he's scaring me too.
Hey, Santa's handing out presents!
Why would he come back here? Even if he was alive, which he isn't. Wouldn't you want to get as far away from here as possible, as far away from you?
We both know this isn't over. I have to go back to the Terrifier.
It's still buried there, isn't it?
It might be the only thing that can stop them. Looking forward to the best Christmas ever, filled with fun, smiles, and laughter.
Good God, I don't even know what to say about this movie or how to do this review, or even where to start. So I'm just going to get right into it and say my prayers that after giving this movie the review I'm about to give it, that I don't burn in the pits of hell. So, oh man, I think I realized I was having a good time with Terrifier 3 when I witnessed a chainsaw getting shoved up the ass of a naked man, then all the way up his spine to cut him in half. Am I wrong for enjoying this? Probably. Will I be judged? Most likely. But that's the fun thing about movies, is that during the runtime of Terrifier 3, I was met with gruesome laughter, pleather seats that squeak, signaling the squirming of audience members at every moment of gore that happens on screen, and countless outbursts of what in the actual fuck, what in the actual hell, oh hell no, or just the random crescendoing squeal of audience members screaming, ah, ending with no. We have dramas that if they're done well, we can hear the subtle, quiet sobs of tears. We have comedies that if they're done well are met with laughter. We have family movies met with children's laughter. Then we have horror movies with Art the Clown that will fill an auditorium with icks and oh my gods or what the fuck did I just witness? This is why some of us go to the movies. Not all audience members go to be changed or have a different output or a different look on life. They go for the experience. And it took a clown to shove a chainsaw up somebody's naked booty to make it happen. Now, is Terrifier 3 a good movie? Absolutely not. But that's the whole point. It's like I said in my Terrifier 2 review. It's self-aware of itself and the audience it wants to please. The thing that separates this from other low-budget movies in horror is that it's a master at utilizing budget and integrating the gore porn with a fine line of fun editing and direction to give a brief sigh of relief that it's fake, but the magic in this filmmaking is the idea of what's happening on screen. This is what separates the Terrifier films from just low-budget horror. It gives us the visual of the idea and allows the audience brain to process what's happening on screen, and it lets our imaginations just take in that feeling. This is what makes the Terrifier film so effective. You can have the fakest special effects, the fakest props, and unrealistic blood. But if you can play filmmaker magician and hit the audience in the mental gut of the idea, that is filmmaking, especially horror filmmaking, magic at its best. Terrifier 3 brings back writer-director Damien Leone, who directed the original 2011 short and all three movies. And he doubles down on the amount of kills, gore, and pushes the envelope on what's considered going too far. But sadly, what he doesn't challenge is considering how to take the story and even the lore further, which ultimately is the movie's biggest flaw, is that the Terrifier 2 added some fantastic elements to show audiences that it can stand on the big screen with a smaller budget and get visuals of disgust, but also gives a story that expands the lore enough to make it interesting. But with this movie, this film, here we have bigger kills, bigger pushes of gore porn, but the story doesn't really take our characters anywhere. But again, those of you listening that just heard me use the word story when I'm referring to Terrifier 3 probably just let out a chuckle. But hear me out, in complete fairness, when we have returning characters like Sienna and Jonathan from Terrifier 2, played by Lauren Lavera and Elliot Fullen, I would expect something just a little bit more expanding, especially after the clever 80s vibe nod we got from the second movie. But here, they're just mere props to drive a simplistic story to give a reason for our Art the Clown to kill, with no real advancement for our characters. Even with our returning clown, Art, repraised here by David Howard Thornton, feels too comfortable. In scenes that don't involve killing or setting up a kill, he's rather boring. There's no real anticipation set up like what we saw from the previous films. There's no real clowning around, if you will. Damien Leone, we can tell, was focused on one thing and one thing only, giving the audience what they want, which is complete over-the-top vicious kills. And you know what? He does a great job with this. My butt cheeks are still clenched from watching this movie. But it doesn't change the fact that it could have been something more. If Leone actually realized that it's just not the kills that made these Terrifier movies so memorable, it's the setup in the first and second one, and it's the expansion of the lore in the second one. There's a lot that really added to the memorable experience of the Terrifier films. Here, we lose that a little bit, which is a shame. The storytelling of the lore really added that one special element to really stand apart from just generic. The Terrifier movies are starting to remind me of the Saw films, where the Saw films where we went each and every year with each and every sequel to see some brutal kills and traps. But once the lore got in the way, it became tiresome. Leone is the opposite, where in the second one we get an increase of lore, but now with the third one we're seeing less lore and more gore. I'm curious, not if, but when the fourth one comes out, if we're gonna get the exhaustion of a singular focus. Terrifier 2 had had one main shock scene. Terrifier 3 has a crescendo of shock scenes that seem to put all of its eggs in one basket and leave no leftovers of shock for the next film. It's almost like Leone doesn't expect another sequel, so he went all in on this one. While writing the review to Terrifier 3, I referred back to my notes of the film, and I have one page that describes my emotions as the movie progressed. It reads as follows: gross. Disgusting with a laugh. That's a little too far. That's way too far. What the fuck? What in the actual fuck? It's still going. And I need Jesus in my life. Terrifier 3 makes its intent clear on what it wants to do, which is satisfy an audience that just want to see a clown kill in ways that will make even the toughest close their eyes. And that's where we are in horror slasher movies today. We have seen it all. Filmmakers like Leone needed to turn up the volume. And I don't know what's more terrifying, the Terrifier or the cinematic Pandora's box of gore porn these movies have opened up. But judge me if you must. I had a great time. I'm giving the Terrifier 3 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now.
Now available on video cassette.
They went looking for a new life and found them in Alien Romulus, which in the theater no one heard me care, but rather heard me groan, receiving 2 stars. Sometimes to survive, we must become more than we are programmed to be, and not only one of the best movies of the year, but the best animated films in the last decade in The Wild Robot, which received 4 stars. Dennis Quaid from young to old played Ronald Reagan in Reagan. That was a valiant effort, but always felt like something was missing that received 2.5 stars. The juice is loose in the sequel 36 years in the making in Beetlejuice. That was a fun trip that was very much alive, receiving 3 stars. And it makes me really hope that there is a Beetlejuice. Oh shit. Everybody deserves a happy ending, in Deadpool and Wolverine, that was one of the biggest, surprising, and audience-fueled experiences of the summer, receiving 3.5 stars. The Things Left Unspoken can't kill you, and I won't speak to the repetitive formula because I can hear the well-executed pacing and performances in Hear No Evil, which received 3 stars. Love Hurts and the Devil's in the Details, and Strange Darling, which had a twist that may have come too early, but still a refreshing take on the tale of a serial killer that landed a killer 3 stars. True Love Never Dies, but this movie should, and the remake to the Brandon Lee classic comes The Crow, which flew south really quick, and hopefully it stays the fuck there, receiving 1.5 stars. Meet Aya, she's an AI here to help in Afraid, but she couldn't help me end the movie quicker, and I'm afraid for anybody that wastes their money on this movie, receiving 1.5 stars. Alexa, block Afraid.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
God fucking damn it. Fear It's Calling Cuckoo, where at times it's cuckoo good and other times it's just cuckoo, receiving 2.5 stars. M. Night Shyamalan brings us into another one of his traps of storytelling, and Trap, that Trapped in 1.5 stars. Then finally, a revenge story that we have all seen before, only this time it surrounds skincare that will make you want to put on a face mask, cucumbers and all, to avoid watching this movie, in Skincare, that received 2 stars. You can check out those reviews of my previous episodes, and while you do, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe, and please don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Now, before we get into the last set of reviews, there is a podcast that not only do I listen to weekly, but every Tuesday you can check both of us out on our crossover show, Back to the Balcony. That's available on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts right now. The host and the podcast I'm talking about is with Antonio over the Cultworthy Cinema podcast, where each week Antonio has a wide range of guests to talk about movies that deserve a rediscovery. So let's hear from Antonio over the Cultworthy Cinema podcast now.
The Cultworthy Podcast. Join me, Antonio Palacios, each week as I guide you through a never-ending sea of obscure cinema and cult-worthy gems that deserve a rediscovery. Find me on all listening platforms and at thecultworthy.com. The Cultworthy Podcast. Join us.
When a mysterious force begins to disrupt their big summer fun, Noah and his friends team up with a retired police detective to embark on a monstrous adventure to save their island in Monster Summer.
Let's get that gang back together again.
This old man Carruthers' property?
I've heard stories about him. Some people think he was a spy, bank robber. I bet their bodies are buried somewhere on this property. That's one in.
Are you see there?
What is that?
A teenager is recovering today after nearly drowning.
Hey, Ben? Something happened to Ben that I can't explain. It's like he's a zombie at Night of the Living Dead.
You okay, bud?
Oh my!
What are you nuts?
Hey, guys, it's okay. I invited him.
Easy, fella.
This is Gene. He's a detective.
Retired. Well, there's more of you. I'm gonna have to dig a mass grave now.
What? Something is out there. If we sit around and do nothing, kids are gonna get hurt, including us. It came after me, man. What came after you?
There's definitely something weird going on here. Monsters.
Yeah. You guys ready?
Not us. Who? Let's do this.
The kids have this vacant look in their eyes. Lights are on, nobody's home. You are overreacting. It's just kids being kids.
Gene. Hey, Gene.
No, I thought I told you.
Gene?
Monster Summer is a movie that we don't see enough of in theaters, and no surprise given the direction studios have gone. A family adventure with some tame horror elements that the whole family can rally around. There's a little something for everyone to enjoy on a family outing with Monster Summer. We have relatable kids put in situations from social control from their parents, friendship, summer break, and for the adults in an adventure interesting enough to entertain, and a solid written character and performance from Mel Gibson, along with some familiar faces, including Kevin James as a small-town sheriff, and a face that is absolutely perfect for the tone and feelings the movie is going for, which is our Ham from The Sandlot, Patrick Retta, who plays an umpire for our kids' baseball games. The film was directed by David Henry, who we recently saw play young Ronald Reagan in this year's Reagan, but most will remember Henry from the TV show Wizards of Waverly Place and Ted's son from How I Met Your Mother. This is Henry's second directorial credit after the small and forgettable This Is the Year that he also helped write. This go-around, Monster Summer was written by Brian Schultz and Cornelius Aliano from 2015's The Peanuts movie, and Henry's interpretation of what this film was meant to be is spot on with the written material. Parents or even those without kids will be taken back to a nostalgic trip from those that grew up in the 80s and 90s, of when studios gave us something in between animation and adult to equal a family movie with real people that appeased a vast audience. A movie that just doesn't throw in pop culture references, sexual innuendos, or jokes targeted for adults that are intended to go over the child's head. That's cheap entertainment. Here we have characters and chemistry that actually is engaging, and both characters and chemistry an audience will want to root for. The movie follows Noah, played by Mason Thames, that we just saw in 2021's The Black Phone, who starts to discover some strange things happening in his town and to his friends. This is where he teams up with an emotionally damaged and confused conflicted ex-detective Gene, again played by Mel Gibson, to help solve the case and help solve what's happening to his friends. But what they discover isn't easily explained or believed, so Noah and Gene have to take on this evil force by themselves. Now, here's where the movie separates itself from being just another generic family movie that will be forgotten in time on a streaming platform and deserved its theatrical run. These are not just generic characters that are inserted to have the story run them, but they run the story. Gibson especially, whose character is not only written cleverly with some real emotional depth to why he is the way he is, but also some current conflicts that help challenge kids and how they deal with this conflict and this emotional stability. It also adds some fantastic character development with Gibson as him and Noah get answers on what's happening to this town. This was a perfect time for this movie to come out around this time, especially since just last week on our crossover show Back to the Balcony, we covered Mel Gibson's The Man Without a Face. We see some of that conflict here, but here in comparison to The Man Without a Face, Gibson isn't directing himself, and because of this, even though damaged, there is an added level of empathy that we can see in this portrayal. Monster Summer is a movie about relationships before it's about the adventure, and rightfully so. To enjoy a true adventure, we of course need characters we want to follow, and chemistries we love to watch. During the runtime of Monster Summer, nostalgic movies kept popping into my head, like The Sandlot, Hocus Pocus, Goonies, Monster Squad, with the chemistry of Peter, Vincent, and Charlie from the Fright Night films. And the movie isn't without its flaws. It does have some pacing issues, but the movie's biggest downfall, since it's been a while since we've seen a family movie like this, the marketing is a huge piece of it. To tell families it's okay to take your kids. Sadly, this movie didn't market very well, so this, I fear, will be lost amongst the other releases around it. So now we're in Halloween October, and now that we have families wanting to give an experience to our kids, take them to movies that they might enjoy in the month of October, they don't really have a lot to pick from. Hey kids, we can go watch The Terrifier Saturday night. Or you know what? There's a movie about Trump. What family should we see this week? Again, The Wild Robot is a safe bet, but if you've already seen it, nothing else is released that will give kids or families that Halloween feel. Now, of course, like a lot of family movies like this, there are moments of cringe that are more for the kids than they are for adults. It's hard to avoid it, but at least it's not fart jokes, so I can look a blind eye. The biggest memorable problem in the film is some of the betrayals. Now, when I say some, that's just me being passive-aggressive. I solely mean Kevin James, who again plays a small-town sheriff who spouts off the worst southern accent that I have ever heard. Where even if it was a cartoon, it would be way too animated, way too goofy. I think his portrayal of President in Pixels was a better performance than this. Now, to be clear, Kevin James has a very minor role. He's in it very briefly, but that accent echoed in my mind throughout the runtime, where I'm guessing James is hoping this movie doesn't do well, because if it does, I'm sure it will become the topic of conversation or a meme. We tend to see that with all the recognizable talent that pops into this movie, where they treat the role as an Adam Sandler cameo. Even taking a look at our umpire, Patrick Renna, his portrayal is a hit or miss, even though he has more wins than misses in his performance. But by the end of the movie, it felt like Renna's performance and the material was missing something, and I will just leave it at that. But holistically, the film is a fun family affair that does deliver the goods on adventure, mild scares, and of course, what's a good family movie without messaging? It delivers here too on multiple levels, including the use of the word monsters and how it's relevant in today's world, and of course, the overlaying theme of friendship. Monster Summer is a great introduction to horror movies for kids because it leans on the adventure side, almost how Goosebumps are a good introduction to horror literature for kids. The release to this movie is a tricky one because I can bet by the time this review hits, it will be out of theaters. It's a summer movie, but also a perfect Halloween movie. So studios just said, let's meet in the middle when it comes to a release date. And sadly, that is something along with the lack of marketing that will lead to this movie not being seen in theaters. So if that's the case, and I am right, and the movie isn't available in theaters by the time this review comes out, when it does hit streaming, which I hope is around Halloween, gather the family, turn down the lights, pop some popcorn, and enjoy this family nostalgic gem of a family adventure that will have your family putting their phones away. These movies don't come around as often as they should for our kids and our families. When a good one comes around, don't let it slip within the cracks. This will be one your kids will remember, just like some of us had in our childhood. And for us adults, rewatching movies like The Sandlot, Hocus Pocus, Goonies, Monster Squad, year over year, this is going to be one that will take you down memory lane without already knowing what's going to happen. I'm giving Monster Summer 3 stars. The story of how young Donald Trump started his real estate business in 1970s and 80s New York, with helping hand of infamous lawyer Roy Cohn in The Apprentice.
Yes.
Hello, this is Donald Trump from Mr. Cohn. Thank you so much.
Donald who?
1, 2, 3, 4!
Roy Cohn, nice to meet you.
The Roy Cohn, you're brutal.
Guilty as charged.
How do you always win?
There's rules. The first rule is attack, attack, attack.
It's going to be the finest building in the city, maybe the country, in the world.
Rule 2, admit nothing, deny everything.
There's never been anything like this, of this magnitude, this quality. Ooh, cheese balls over here.
What are you doing?
You want one?
No, it looks totally disgusting.
Cheese balls.
Rule 3, no matter what happens, you claim victory and never admit defeat. You have to be willing to do anything to anyone to win. You have a big ass. You gotta work on that.
Your face looked like an orange.
Attack, attack, attack.
Deny everything, admit nothing.
Never admit defeat.
What if you lost your fortune today?
Well, then maybe I'll run for president. I don't know.
I say, if you're indicted, you're invited.
Now, here's yet another reminder if you haven't listened to my show. Again, with any movie about a political person, topic, or political stance, I solely believe that a personal opinion on a person, stance on a topic, or political party shouldn't be relevant to how a film should be judged. In no way will I now or ever put my political opinion in a film review. I also encourage others to show the same respect to the artist that tells a story through their vision, just as we should show the same respect of listening to other verbal opinions with a certain respect. In the words of Sebastian Stan, who plays our young Trump, when he was interviewed about his portrayal of Trump, he states, "You have to go into the role on what serves the story, the character, without judgment, without all the good, without all the bad and the ugly. You have to detach from all the fear, all the noise that's surrounding us at this time." But let's just address the elephant in the room. You either love him or you hate him. I think that's the best way of putting it when it comes to the name Donald J. Trump. When we have a country that's so divided, there's a level of risk releasing a movie like this. So I have to give the studios involved respect on the risk to have this movie released. The movie stars again Sebastian Stan, who portrays our young Donald Trump and his grow to fame and fortune under the apprenticeship of notorious lawyer Roy Cohn, played by Succession's Jeremy Strong. Now, as The Apprentice starts, of course we're going to get a message of some scenes were exaggerated for dramatic purposes, which shouldn't be a surprise for a movie like this, as we see time and time again from biopics based on true events or loosely based on true events. So this isn't really a surprise. The challenge we have with a film like this is to really take emotion out of it. If the intent is to paint a picture factually on things that have happened, we have a hot topic like Donald J. Trump. And this is the real true test of the filmmaking process. If you're a filmmaker that supports Trump, are you going to present him in a neutral light? Or if you're against Trump, are you going to portray him in a fair light? This is a very tricky slope for any filmmaker to take on, which really does add to the risk of the release of this film. Obviously, The Apprentice has taken into account numerous biographies, interviews, articles to paint the picture. But even with some insertions, not all of what's presented can be 100% validated without the he said, she said mentality. The Apprentice was written by Gabriel Sherman, whose only other big writing credit was the sloppy, disappointing sequel, Independence Day Resurgence. Now, of course, The Apprentice isn't all sunshine and rainbows for Donald Trump, but what Sherman does do is not paint a picture of a parody onto Trump. As we see in the first act, we see a less confident, less vocal man with ideas, but no confidence on how to become a successful man of branding. Until he meets Cohn, Cohn. Sherman doesn't write a movie to justify Trump, to defend Trump, and at the same time doesn't feel it was made to just slander Trump per se, but rather give the feeling to understand him as best that we can, with only utilizing the theme of money and power as a driver. And no, at times it's not a pretty picture of Trump, and at times there's a subtle win of understanding of the why. But by the end of the day, when the credits roll, it's just not enough, especially when we get interactions with Trump's father, Fred Trump, and the sad, unfortunate relationship and fate with his brother, Freddie. At times, I feel the movie would have been more successful with a deep dive into the relationships with the Trump family versus all the business. But this is where Sherman's intent does shine through. He does really share a narrative here, an intent of telling a story of the race to money and power versus giving us a deeper understanding through relationship. And this is where it really does falter the movie and hold the movie back. We spend more time with a Succession type of theme where deeper conversations and relationships feel segmented, and we could have gone further. Sherman's written vision and intent of telling a story to the rise of power overpowers the understanding of our Trump character. And I know some that are listening that are against Trump or even for Trump are saying, what is there to understand? We don't need to have an understanding of this man. But as history has shown us, and history will show us, is that a deeper understanding of the human psyche or character study has importance, not just the actions. And that's what this movie really lacked. And you know, for some, this movie might work as just a piece of simplistic storytelling. But for me, it didn't completely work. Trump has been a big part of the news, TV, media, a public figure well before he was a political figure. So what we see on screen doesn't really feel new or a looking glass into Trump. But I would be lying if I didn't say that Trump can make an interesting character study. There is a curiosity surrounding him. And with a man that says whatever he wants and still have that curiosity around him means that there is a deeper movie to be had. Whenever there is a scene where we could have an emotional element, the movie steers away, which does make the movie feel one-sided on its intent. Our director Ali Abbasi does a good job on keeping with the dark tone of money and power, in which supports Sherman's script, but the movie gets so obsessed with its own ideas that it doesn't know how to pivot to the human element, and not just with Trump, but with any of the characters. By the time we get to the final act, it's so structured, we know exactly the outcome, even if you don't know Trump's story. When we get this structure, we get this feeling of structure, this is where the writing and the directing walks a fine line on a made-for-TV movie. If it wasn't for the production value and outstanding performances, this movie would have crossed the line of made-for-TV or direct-to-streaming, like we saw in 2020's The Comey Rule. Now, if you don't plan on watching The Apprentice for whatever reason you may have, I will at least challenge you to watch it due to the memorable, outstanding performances. Succession's Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn, Borat actress and Oscar nominee Maria Bakalova as Ivana, and again Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump. Now, I wish I had more faith in the Academy to recognize Sebastian Stan in this role when it comes to awards time. Donald Trump isn't an easy persona to take on without going full parody, that we more recently saw in 2020 from the Showtime original movie The Comey Rule, in which Brendan Gleeson took on the role of Trump. That was an attempt at being serious, but became unintentionally laughable. It was too over the top, it wasn't subtle. It went all in because emotion was put into the role. This is where Sebastian Stan gets it right, and I quoted it in the beginning of the review, is you have to take emotion out of it and see the character for what it is. Sebastian Stan embodies the role, not only as a believable performance, but a challenging one to crescendo the Trump persona from subtle son from a rich family to a public figure. At times, I was engulfed into just watching Stan on how he mimics Trump's mannerisms. It is one of the most impressive performances of the year and deserves to be recognized when it comes to awards time. The Apprentice is held together by the ensemble to really drive the movie along. It's a rarity in movies, especially now, where a cast can make even the most simplistic dialogue just work, but they can only do it for so long. Even when we lead to the climax where we get scenes of Roy Cohn as he sees Trump as the final result of his creation, if you will, and it's just not one moment but multiple moments where I thought back to the disclaimer in the beginning, where it stated some moments are exaggerated for dramatic purposes. I thought to myself, now would be a good time to utilize this disclaimer because the film keeps the dialogue so simple or silent. This is where the movie loses credibility, and it makes it hard to believe between Cohn and Trump, two very vocal men, had conversations of conflict that were so tame or without depth. There had to be more to this relationship. There had to be more depth in the conversations. This could have also challenged the range through all these fantastic performances. The Apprentice is an entertaining look at young Trump, but puts money and power over substance. The intent is clear that this is the movie our filmmakers wanted to make, but at the same time, it doesn't add anything new, fresh, or of value. This movie is kept alive by the outstanding performances, but as I gave credit to the studios for taking the risk to make and release this movie at this time, I'm not giving credit to the filmmakers, because the movie's subject and topic, that's the risk to release, but the filmmaking is not. There's no risk to this filmmaking. It's a safe attempt of storytelling of power and money that a lot of us already know. That feels like a story we have seen time and time again. You take the Trump name out of it, and we have seen this before. What this movie really needed to take it further, to add the risk factor, to show us something that we haven't seen before. It needed to show us the man with depth and substance, to give us a good character study, to answer the question of why rather than what. Now, that is a movie that would have taken a real risk. I'm giving The Apprentice 2.5 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Thread, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And please don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you haven't yet checked out the Cultworthy Cinema podcast and the Movie Wire's crossover show, Back to the Balcony, make sure you do. Again, the link of that show will be in the description of this episode. Until next week, do me a favor. Make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film, and support your local movie theaters.
In the dark of a better, we dive into the scenes. Terrifier 3 with a chainsaw in the booty brings the fun. But the Apprentice just didn't impress with a tale of Trump we already know. Let's break it down, here rewind and rewind. This ends the movie wire, let's roll the credits. Justin Henson's here, let's take it in stride. Review and subscribe, we'll shine in the light. In this film pop sky, we're ready to ignite. Monster summer, a monster of family fun that made us shout. Go, Mel Gibson, go! One last take, let's discuss the grind. This ends the movie wire, goodbye. See you later, it's time for the credits to roll. Justin Henson's here, let's take it in stride. Review and subscribe, the projector will shine in the light. In this film pop sky, we're ready to ignite. Go, Mel Gibson, go! This ends the movie wire, goodbye. See you later, it's time for the credits to roll. So here's to the films that spark our delight. Join us next time as we take a flight. So, bite, our delight. So here's to the films that spark our delight. Join us next time as we take our flight. Our flight.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.
As the credits roll, we say farewell. Join us next time, we'll have more tales to tell.